Hi, I'm Lara Shannon, and in today's webinar I'm going to be chatting around those three most common dog behaviour issues that many of us face, myself included, that we really need to get on top of before we head away with our dogs. Now, Vindy here. Vindy, come. Yes, good boy. What a good boy you are. Vindy is a little foster pup who demonstrates all of these problem behaviours, but a big one that we're really working on now is recall. And this is really one of the most important things that you need to ensure is bulletproof in your dog, because it really is important from a safety point of view, and it can help you in many instances. Say your dog's a bit reactive, it can help ensure that you can get them back to you to keep them out of trouble, as well as other people and other dogs. So with recall, there's some very common mistakes people make. I am going to assume that you have done some recall practice with your dog as a puppy. If you haven't, please start working on this straight away. You start with low distraction in your backyard on a short lead, then gradually move to a longer line so that you're increasing the distance that they are away from you, and also the distraction. Then you might go to your front yard, and then low times at the dog off-leash park, then busy times. So that's the process of recall, and just gradually moving up to the end goal. But the big mistake people make is when they've got a pretty good recall on their dog, but it's not 100% of the time. And there's many reasons for this. Often is because the dog is so distracted, having such a great time. Say they're sniffing or they're scenting or they're playing with another dog, and the owner's standing on the other side of the park and decides to start calling their name. Now, if your dog is having a grand old time playing, is in the middle of play, or you've got a Labrador or a Beagle, for example, and their nose is to the ground and they're sniffing away, they can't even hear you. So all you're doing is, by standing there calling them constantly, is getting frustrated, of course, but then also by constantly calling your dog, if they're not coming back to you, you're actually training them to ignore you. So we want to make sure that we're always close enough to our dog that I normally say 2 calls is about it. And if something's going on that they're either ignoring or they can't hear you, stop, and then just moving in closer so that you are able to grab them. So we want to make sure we're not training our dog by constantly calling them. Now, the other thing as well is we always just need to be so much more fun than anything else that's going on. That's really the only way to ensure your dog comes back to you. And so doing that, Vindy, yes, come. Good boy. I always use a bit of a funny voice. If they're on the other side of the park, one way to absolutely guarantee I get them back to me is by squeaking a toy. That'll get Darcy in the middle of play even stopping and coming back to me. So you've got to find what motivates your dog, making sure they know about it. So if you've got treats, making sure they know you've got treats and practicing when they're close, or using something that's really highly fun to get them back to you. Or in the case of Vindy, often what I'll do, come, yes, is running backwards, or if he's busy playing and I'm just having no luck and I'm too far away and I've kind of set both myself and him up to fail, I take off in the opposite direction, and then I see him look and he comes running for me. So running away and really taking off is one good way. We just need to make sure that we are so much more fun than another dog's butt. So remember that. The other thing that we need to make sure we do is that we release our dog. We get them back to us, we reward them, and then we release them again, so that they don't start to associate every time they're coming back to you with going home and the fun ending. Because often you'll find is people, come on over, the dog comes back, and the end of play occurs. So we just need to change it up and not do it at the same time, but maybe one day, a couple of times, and freeing them again, letting them go back to play, so they can't predict that it's going to be the end of the fun. And then another one, are you right there, Vindy, having a lay down? Good boys. So making sure we're more fun, making sure we don't train them not to listen to us, releasing them a few times so that they never quite know whether it's home time or not. And then finally, the big thing, if your dog has taken its time to come back to you, which sometimes they can, they're having a grand old time, or for whatever reason they just plod along. Often, owners tend to get a little bit frustrated, so if the dog's taken a while or they haven't come back, when they finally do, they get punished. Or, it's a really negative experience for them. So your dog learns, hang on, I came back to you, even if it wasn't ideal, in their brain, they still came back to you, but then they've been punished. So anything we reward increases with intensity and more frequency. Anything we punish tends to fade out. So be careful that you're not punishing your dog returning to you. Now, if they have, however, they have a pretty good recall, they have ignored you for whatever reason, but they finally made their way back, rather than telling them off, And you certainly don't want to reward them for that slow response. Instead, you might do shake, shake, Dusty, shake. Yes, good boy. You might do some obedience instead. Vindy, yeah, say he'd ignored me. Sit. Yes, good boy. So I reward the obedience behaviour. Let's go. And so all Vindy remembers then, so he's come back, that's already forgotten because he's already done an alternative command, that's sit. And that's what he's being rewarded for, and then we go home. So it ends on a high rather than a negative. So that's just some little tips to really help improve your dog's recall. There's a video on this that you can have a look where I run through all of that in a bit more detail. One of the other common behaviour issues that we want to get on top of, particularly if we're staying in a caravan park or campground, is our dogs barking, particularly that territorial barking that dogs tend to do when people or other dogs walk past the van. Now, it is very natural behaviour for a dog to bark, so we don't want to be punishing them or stopping them completely from barking. Really, our key is to really try and reduce the intensity and frequency of their barking, and also some of those situations where they are naturally going to bark and we still want them to, like that territorial, letting you know that someone's coming past, but that we can stop it immediately and quieten them down. So one of the biggest things and one of the biggest mistakes that we make is that when our dogs are barking at something going on, we tend to yell out, "Stop it, would you?" Or, you know, when we're yelling their name, we're telling them off. And in fact, in our dog's brain, all that's really happening is all they can hear is us barking as well, and hearing us yelling, panicking, and then obviously them thinking there must be a reason, there must be a threat, so I'm just going to bark even louder. So instead of joining in the barking with them, what we want to do, and this sounds a little bit counterproductive or counterintuitive, is if your dog's barking at a window or people going past, again, this is why recall, having a good recall on your dog is so important, calling them, "Dusty, come!" "Yes, good boy," and giving him a reward. Now, even though you might think that you're rewarding them for the barking, because you've actually given them a command, "Come," in the dog's brain, that's actually all they're remembering at that time, and that's what they're being rewarded for. But also then, that helps create a positive association with people walking past. So normally the negative reaction and their negative association is they're barking away, they're all really panicking. Normally you're yelling out too, which makes it a really negative, horrible experience. So that's going to happen with more intensity and frequency. Instead, if you're calling them over nice and calmly, "Dusty, come," and you've rewarded them, you're actually changing their association with people walking past. And over time, what you'll tend to find, if you're really consistent and really positive about it, and the timing's right, that they have come, then basically you are actually going to start creating that negative, what was a negative trigger, you're actually going to create a positive association. So in time, the dog is going to start seeing people, and then all of a sudden it's going to go, "Oh, that's right. When this happens and these people walk past, something better happens." So they run back to you. They start looking back to you for their reward for not barking. And of course, if a dog's busy doing something else, they can't be doing two things at once. The other thing with barking is attention-seeking barking, which is very similar to Darcy's little beg here. He's wanting these balls from me or a treat. And normally what happens, this is all very cute, isn't it? We give in, "Oh, aren't you cute?" Or they might even just want a pat. They just want our attention, basically. So whether it's begging, whether it's putting a ball constantly in your lap to be thrown, or whether it's barking at you, generally what happens is we tend to reinforce this in our dogs because we give them what we want. Even if our dog is barking at us, we often turn around and say, "Be quiet." Or even if you're inclined to, or say it's jumping and they're jumping up at you, you push them away. All of this is attention-seeking behaviour. They've actually gotten their reward. So we need to be really careful about what we reward in our dogs. Even if we don't think that telling them to be quiet and yelling at them is a reward. If the dog is barking at you for attention, whining at you, jumping on you, and you actually acknowledge that, they've actually already been rewarded. And again, anything we reward occurs with more intensity and frequency. So instead, if your dog is barking at you for your attention or begging at you, whatever it is, and you don't want to reward it, it's really tough, but you really do need to ignore it. Okay? And by ignoring it, you're giving them nothing, no eye contact, no touching, no speaking. And the moment that they go quiet, "Yes, good dog. And that's when they get their reward, that's when they get their pat, that's when they get what they want. A real example of this one, which really kind of highlights what we often do, is our dogs barking or jumping on the back door to be let inside. Normally when that happens, people yell out from the lounge room, whatever it is, be quiet. In the dog's mind, they've just gone, ooh, yeah, that got their attention, didn't it? They might even be quiet for a little minute because they're like, oh yeah, I know that they're not happy, but then they're kind of like, I might just amp this up a little bit. So then they tend to bark, jump and get a bit louder. And then you might even go out, open the door, tell them to be quiet, shut the door, think, yeah, that told them, didn't it? Go back into the lounge room. All you've actually done then is shown your dog that you're getting closer to their end goal, because their end goal is to be let inside, okay? And then generally what happens is your dog will start, after a little while, barking, scratching at the back door even more, and most of us give up, go out, oh for goodness sakes, open the door, get them in, go to your bed, bad dog, whatever it is you might do that you think is punishing them. But in the dog's mind, and actually in reality, they've just been rewarded. They just got exactly what they wanted. And even if they do get any kind of punishment with it, dogs are very good at taking the punishment if their end goal, which is better, is met. So even if, say, you really told your dog off or you punished them, you gave them time out after letting them in, they'll cop that, because they know it's still got them towards their end goal. So we just need to be really careful how we reward our dogs. And our really best mechanism is to ignore that unwanted behaviour, and then the moment they go quiet or they stop jumping or stop whatever it is, that's when we reward them. So that's how we really deal with the attention-seeking barking. And then the other two common reasons why dogs bark is anxiety and boredom. The anxiety is just a very prolific issue that we are dealing with more and more in dogs and cats these days. I will be talking more about that in tomorrow's webinar. But really, the biggest thing that we want to be making sure, and boredom and anxiety can display a lot of the same behaviour problems. So we often see, obviously the barking, we often see destructive chewing, destructive behaviours. We definitely don't want to be punishing it, because we need to understand why our dogs are doing that. And the way to prevent both anxiety and boredom is, number one, to make sure that we are giving our dogs the exercise and mental and physical stimulation that they need every day. Particularly if you're going away, it can go two ways. You might take your dog out more than ever, so they are actually quite tired and really well behaved, or you might be kicking back a bit more in the caravan park, so your dog isn't getting that amount of exercise that they're used to. So a bored, or a bored dog in particular, or a dog that's got all this pent-up energy, really is going to act out more. I always say a tired dog is a good dog, so we want to make sure we're keeping their exercise up. We also want to make sure that we're stimulating their brain as well. And this can be handy if you want to go visit the neighbour's caravan and you just want to leave your dog in the van for a little bit. They have a bit of separation anxiety. What you want to do is just make sure that their brains are kept mentally active. So things like interactive toys are a great way to get their brains and their bodies moving. So make sure you take a few of these along with you. If your dog's not into toys, snuffle mats are great. You can put treats into them. Obviously just leave them in the van with it, and then while you're popping over for a wine next door, your dog can keep themselves occupied. So that's another reason and another good thing to take away with you on your holiday, just to get some extra energy out of your dog. And one of our other most common behaviour issues that you really want to get on top of as well before you take your dog to a very public caravan park or even off-leash parks is our dogs jumping up on us and jumping up on other people. So if you've just got yourself a puppy and you're wanting to take it away with you on your holidays, or just in general, one of the biggest things we need to be really careful is that we do not reinforce jumping in our dogs from puppyhood. Now the way we do this is normally you get a puppy home, or if you've got children, the puppy's all excited, everyone's excited, your puppy's jumping up on you, you get down on the ground, you're rolling around, they're pulling your hair, they're jumping all over you, you're patting them. You're actually rewarding your puppy for all that jumping behaviour. Now it might be fine when they're a tiny little bundle of fluff, but when they turn into an adult dog, that same behaviour is going to become a problem. And then all of a sudden you start punishing them. Your dog's jumping up on you, doing what they were basically trained to do as a puppy, and then all of a sudden they start getting punished for it. So it's very confusing for them, and then it's also very hard to undo that kind of behaviour. It's something that I'm dealing with Vindy, and also, you know, chewing is a very similar thing, making sure that we don't set our dogs up to fail by reinforcing them and allowing them to do it when they're very young, so that it then becomes a problem. Another way this is obviously often reinforced is by other people. You're walking your dog, they're lunging, they're excited, they want to say hi, and most people bend down and give them what they want, that touch, that reward, while they're still lunging in the air. So a little tip, if your dog does tend to be a bit of a jumper, what I tend to do is I just use my knees. I don't mean knee them, but basically, you know, just if they're connecting, I don't want them to connect, or I try and get out of the way so they can't connect. And in that moment, that all 4 feet are on the ground, so I'm making it really uncomfortable as they're jumping. And then when they finally stop, yes, good dog. And that's when they get their reward, whether that be a treat, the pat, whatever is the dog is trying to get from you. Same with attention. So they're jumping up, like the barking for attention seeking, they're jumping up, trying to get your attention. You walk in the door, they're all excited. And, you know, you might even say, get down. You're still giving your dog the attention, what they want, or you might even push them down, which they've got your hands, their touch. So we've got to be, again, careful about what we reward. So if you have a really good sit on your dog, or a drop, or you've taught them on your bed, what I tend to do is when I come in the door and Darcy's about to jump to say hi, I'm on your bed, Darcy, and he stops and he runs back to his bed and he gets all excited, because what I do is I make a really big fuss of him when he's in his bed. So he actually trembles with excitement when I say on your bed and runs over there, because I really make that a really big reward for him. So we want to teach things like a really good sit or on your bed to prevent jumping, because we can give them that alternative command. And if their brain is doing one thing, as I said earlier, they can't do 2 things at once. So your dog comes running up, sit, yes, good dog. Pat, welcome, thanks for welcoming me home. And then likewise, when you see other people, if other people are out and your dog's lunging, pulling, wanting to jump, just ask them to stop. I know it's tough, but you've got to really be consistent with your training, and everyone in the family has to do this. So basically, stop, please don't touch them, sit, come on over, say hi. So that way other people aren't reinforcing that unwanted behaviour in your dog, and also that you're not doing it either. So really work on your sits, your alternative commands, and then again making it really not comfortable or fun for them to be jumping up on you, and then rewarding them the moment that all 4 feet are on the ground or they've gone into a sit. And if you do that, that is the behaviour that you're going to see more of. Again, there are videos on all of these topics that you can get more information about. Tomorrow's webinar, as I said, will be around anxiety, which is another cause for many of these issues. So from separation anxiety just to reactivity in general, or even fear-based aggression, that'll all be discussed tomorrow.